It started with a phone call I didn't expect and a voice I didn't trust. "Hi, Mr. Williams," she said, sweet as syrup. "We just wanted to invite you to dinner tonight, talk about the wedding plans." It was the first time she had ever called me directly. Until that night, every message from her came through my son, Mark. And every one of them sounded like an order disguised as a suggestion. Still, I said yes. Because a father says yes to the woman his son is about to marry, even when every instinct tells him to keep his distance. The restaurant was one of those new, polished places downtown, all white tablecloths and dim golden light. She arrived in a silver dress that shimmered under the chandelier. Mark looked proud. I looked tired. "So," I said, half smiling, "how are the plans coming along?" "Oh, perfect," she purred, touching Mark's arm. "Just a few details. Like who sits where. I was thinking your table could be near the back. Closer to the staff entrance, you know, so you don't feel overwhelmed." She said it lightly, but her eyes didn't match her tone. Mark laughed awkwardly. "Dad, she's just kidding." "I'm sure," I said, taking a sip of water. "I've been near the kitchen most of my life, so that's fine." She tilted her head, studying me. "That's right, you used to manage that hardware store, right? Before it closed." The way she paused before the last word felt like a knife sliding under my ribs. Mark changed the subject, but I saw the smirk she tried to hide behind her wineglass. When the check came, she reached for it, then laughed. "Oh, no, no, we'll let you handle that, Mr. Williams. Tradition, right?" I paid. And as they left arm in arm, she turned and said, "Oh, by the way, we might need to discuss something important soon." "Don't worry, it's nothing serious." But the way she smiled told me it was. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen. The clock ticked loud against the silence. I poured a glass of bourbon and stared at the photo on the fridge, Mark at 12, holding a fishing rod, grinning like the world was simple and kind. I didn't know it yet, but that dinner had already planted the seed of the lie that would turn my own son against me. The house felt emptier than usual that night. The air carried that faint smell of dust and old coffee, the kind that settles when no one visits for too long. I sat in my armchair, TV on mute, watching the news crawl across the bottom of the screen without reading it. My thoughts stayed stuck on her voice, that sugar-coated tone hiding barbs underneath. I'd seen that kind of woman before. Back when I ran the store, a few customers walked in smiling, asking for discounts they didn't need, acting like they were doing me a favor. Always polite, always smiling, until they didn't get what they wanted. That's what she was. Polite, beautiful, and dangerous in the way of people who think they deserve more than they've earned. I reached for my phone more than once, thinking of calling Mark. Then I stopped. What would I even say? "Your fiancé makes me uncomfortable." He'd laugh it off, say I was being old-fashioned or lonely. Maybe I was. I walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the rain had started again, light and steady, drumming softly against the glass. Her car's headlights had shone like that, white and sharp, when they left the restaurant, slicing through the dark as if erasing everything behind them. I took another sip of bourbon, turned the photo of Mark face down on the counter, and said quietly to the empty room, "She's going to hurt you, son. I just don't know how yet." Then I switched off the light. The wedding rehearsal was held at a country estate just outside Austin, all white arches and manicured lawns. Everyone was smiling, hugging, and pretending the weather would hold through the weekend. I parked a little away from the main lot, just to have a quiet minute before stepping into that world. It wasn't mine anymore. Inside, Mark was radiant. He'd always been handsome, my ex-wife's cheekbones, my shoulders. He hugged me fast, already distracted by his bride-to-be and her perfect entourage. "Dad! Glad you made it. We're just about to run through the ceremony." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "You look good, son." She appeared a moment later, Emily. The same silver shimmer, the same smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Williams," she said, her tone a mix of charm and warning. "We'll start soon. There's a seat in the back for you. Hope you don't mind, the photographers need the front rows clear." "Of course," I said. People brushed past, laughing. I stood alone for a while, watching the crew set up the floral arch. It was all so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. Then I heard it, my name, spoken softly behind me. "Mr. Williams, can we talk privately?" Emily again. I followed her out to the patio. The air smelled of roses and rain. She looked nervous, or pretended to. I just wanted to say, "I know things between us have been awkward. I'd really like to start fresh." I nodded slowly. "That'd be nice." She stepped closer, almost too close. "You know, Mark means everything to me. And I just want to make sure you're not interfering. Sometimes he gets anxious when people criticize me, and..." I frowned. "Interfering? Emily, I don't." That's when she gasped and stumbled back. "Don't touch me," she shouted, loud enough for the sound to slice through the patio doors. I froze. My hand was still at my side. I hadn't moved. Voices rushed toward us, bridesmaids, the planner, Mark. Their faces were confused, alarmed. Emily covered her mouth, eyes wide, trembling with fake tears. He grabbed me. I just wanted to talk, and he... "What?" I said, my voice cracking with disbelief. "I didn't, Mark, I didn't touch her." Mark's face was red, his jaw tight. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" "She's lying," I said, stepping forward, too fast. The bridesmaid flinched. "You saw me, didn't you see?" "I didn't." "Stop." Mark barked. "You're making it worse." The silence that followed was thicker than rain. Emily sobbed into her hands. One of her friends wrapped an arm around her, glaring at me. "You should leave. Now." "Mark," I said quietly, "look at me." He didn't. He just kept shaking his head. I walked away without another word. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I reached my car. When I looked back, I saw her standing beside him, crying against his chest, and him, holding her like she was the one who'd been betrayed. That night, the phone calls started. First the wedding planner, for everyone's comfort, "It might be best if you skipped the ceremony." Then Mark, his voice cold, rehearsed, like he'd already chosen which version of the truth to believe. "Dad, maybe it's better if you take a step back for a while. You've been tense lately." "Tense? She lied about me, Mark." "You saw." "I didn't see anything, Dad." His voice cracked. "And she's shaken up, okay? Just, please, let's not make this worse." The line went silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "Don't come to the wedding." And that was that. The next morning, I sat by the window and watched the rain return, slow, steady, patient. The world didn't stop because my son stopped believing in me. I poured another bourbon, though it was barely past 10. On the counter, the invitation still lay open, her handwriting looping perfectly across the envelope, "Mr. Daniel Williams, father of the groom." I picked it up, stared at the words, and whispered, "Not anymore." The day of the wedding came gray and windless, the kind of sky that looks like it's waiting for someone to apologize. I didn't go, of course. The invitation sat in the trash under yesterday's coffee grounds. Instead, I spent the morning in silence. No TV. No radio. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. People say time heals, but they forget it can also sharpen. Every minute alone added another edge to my thoughts. By noon, curiosity broke through the pride. I opened my laptop and searched for the photographer's page. She'd tagged the wedding. There they were, smiling under that perfect arch, her dress glittering like nothing ugly had ever touched her life. Mark beside her, straight-backed and handsome, but his eyes looked different. Distant. In one photo, her parents stood proudly behind them. In another, my chair, the one meant for father of the groom, sat empty. I closed the laptop, sat back, and felt something in me finally stop trembling. That was the moment. Not rage, clarity. She'd taken my son's trust, my name, and my place in his life. She'd wanted me erased. I could give her exactly that, just not in the way she imagined. That afternoon, I drove into town. The rain had washed the air clean, the way it does before something begins. I parked outside a small diner where the coffee was bad but the gossip was good. Inside, behind the counter, was Tom Reed, an old customer from the hardware store, now a private investigator. He looked up, surprised. "Well, I'll be damned. Daniel Williams. Haven't seen you since the flood took your stockroom." "Hey Tom," I said. "You still keep those old background check services running?" He squinted. "For friends. Depends on what you're after." "A woman," I said. "Name's Emily Carter. Married my son last weekend." He raised an eyebrow. "You checking up on your new daughter-in-law?" "Something like that." He nodded slowly. "You got a feeling, huh?" "Yeah. And I've learned to trust the bad ones." The next few days moved quietly, like a clock counting down. Tom called on Wednesday. "You were right to be suspicious," he said. "There's a trail, debt, fake references, a lawsuit sealed in Dallas. She used a different name 3 years ago. Moved towns after some guy pressed charges for fraud." I gripped the phone tighter. "Can you get me proof?" "Already sent to your email." When I opened the file, my breath caught. There she was, younger, darker hair, same smile. The court records mentioned coercion, falsified documents, manipulation for financial gain. She'd reinvented herself. And now she'd married my son. I sat back, staring at the ceiling. So that was her game, a predator chasing stability and money, cutting away anything that stood in her way. She wanted control. She'd get exposure instead. That night I wrote in my old leather notebook, the one I hadn't touched since the store closed. I listed names: Mark, Emily, Tom, the lawyer who'd helped me file for bankruptcy years ago. Then, next to each name, I wrote what they needed to know and when. This wasn't revenge born of fury anymore. It was balance. If truth was the weapon she feared most, then truth was what I'd use. Before closing the notebook, I drew one small circle around her name. And beneath it, a single line. They wanted my weakness. I gave them my silence instead. The following week, I woke earlier than usual. No bourbon, no fog. Just black coffee and a plan. It felt strange, almost peaceful, like I finally had a reason to stand up straight again. The first step was the lawyer, James Holloway, a man who owed me a favor. He was the kind of man who never smiled unless money changed hands, but he respected records and proof. And that was enough. I called him that morning. "James, I need something quiet, background verification, property records, marriage filings." "For who?" "My son's wife. Emily Carter, though she's used other names." He exhaled softly. "You're not planning something illegal, are you?" "No," I said. "Just, honest." He paused. "Come by the office. Bring whatever you have." By noon, I was sitting across from him, handing over a folder thick with Tom's findings. He flipped through the pages, the sealed Dallas case, the fake employer references, the credit debt still unpaid under her old alias. "She's good," he murmured. "Better than most." "She's careful," I corrected. "Good would mean she didn't leave a trail." He looked at me over his glasses. What exactly do you want to do with this? I leaned back. Expose her. Not to the police, not yet. To him. And to everyone she's been fooling. James closed the folder, lips tightening. Then you'll need a public moment. And timing. I can prepare certified copies. Financial statements too. You want the truth to be undeniable. That's all I need. For days, I played the part of the broken father. I answered Mark's short messages with soft replies. I understand, son, I just want you happy. Let them think I was fading away. People lower their guard when they believe they've already won. Meanwhile, Tom sent more evidence, screenshots of her messages to another man, a banker she'd been courting months before meeting Mark. The tone was the same, sweet, needy, strategic. Her pattern was clear: lure, control, extract. But she made a mistake this time. The banker still had the messages, and Tom convinced him to share them, under the promise that his name would stay buried. The screenshots were gold. They showed her bragging. He thinks I'm everything he dreamed of, and his dad's just a sad old man I'll push out of the picture. Once we're married, I'll make him sell that property. Then Mark won't have a say. Reading those words didn't hurt, it clarified. You can't mourn someone you never truly knew. James and I planned the timing. 2 weeks from then, Emily and Mark would host a small wedding reception for relatives who couldn't attend the main ceremony. A chance to celebrate with family, she'd written on social media. I didn't comment. I just clicked going. I knew she'd see it, and that she'd smile, thinking I was coming to beg forgiveness. She didn't know I'd be bringing the truth with me. The day before the reception, I stopped by the hardware store building, now abandoned, dust curling under the broken sign. Inside, light fell through the cracks like old memories. I found my workbench still there, the one I used to build custom shelves and fix people's dreams for less than they cost. I ran my hand over the wood, then pulled a small box from my coat. Inside were the documents, the photos, and a single USB drive holding the digital proof. I labeled it, for Mark. A ritual. A promise. I wasn't seeking revenge anymore, I was seeking restoration. That evening, I called Tom one last time. You sure about this? He asked. Once she's exposed, it's going to be ugly. Public. Good, I said quietly. She wanted a stage. I'll give her one. He chuckled low. You always were patient, Danny. Most men your age would have blown up the minute she lied. I used to fix things for a living, I said. Turns out that includes people's illusions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing Mark as a boy, building model planes on that same kitchen table where I now spread out the evidence. His little fingers gluing wings while I told him to always check twice before trusting the label on a box. He didn't listen then. Maybe he would now. When the dawn came, I folded everything neatly into a briefcase, took a deep breath, and whispered to the morning light, "All right, Emily. Curtains up." The reception was held at a lakeside hall just outside the city, one of those places that smelled faintly of champagne and money. The guests arrived in pastel dresses and gray suits, laughter rising like smoke. I parked far off, watching for a while before stepping inside. It had been months since I'd seen my son. He looked older, sharper, but there was a weight in his shoulders that didn't belong. When his eyes met mine across the room, the conversation around him froze for half a heartbeat, then resumed, forced and shallow. Emily noticed me next. Her lips parted in surprise, then curved into a practiced smile. "Mr. Williams," she said, gliding toward me in white silk and diamonds. "You came." "That's so, unexpected." "I keep my promises," I said evenly. "You invited family." "I'm family." Her gaze flicked to the briefcase in my hand. "Business even today?" "Just old habits." She laughed softly and leaned closer. Let's make sure we keep today peaceful. No misunderstandings. Of course, I said. Peaceful sounds perfect. The speeches began. Her father talked too long. Her mother cried too much. Then it was Mark's turn, nervous, heartfelt, good as ever. When he finished, the host clapped and gestured toward me. And now, the man said cheerfully, the father of the groom would like to say a few words. A murmur rolled through the room. Emily's smile froze. I hadn't told anyone I'd speak. Mark turned, uncertain. Dad, you don't have to. I know, I said quietly, standing. But I want to. The hall dimmed slightly as the evening sun dipped lower, turning the windows gold. I stepped to the small stage, briefcase in hand, and rested it on the podium. My fingers didn't shake. They hadn't in days. I wasn't planning to talk, I began. A few polite smiles. A few wary eyes. I didn't even plan to come. But sometimes life gives you chances to fix what's been broken. Emily's shoulders stiffened. I want to say something to my son first, I continued. Mark, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. And I failed you, because when people lie to you, you don't always see it. Especially when you love them. The crowd stirred, soft, restless. Emily's eyes flashed. I wasn't at your wedding, I said. Because someone told you I'd done something unforgivable. You believed it. And maybe you were right too. I've never been perfect. But I've never raised my hand to a woman in my life. Gasps. Whispers. Emily stood, voice trembling but loud. That's enough, Mr. Williams. This is not the place. No, I said quietly, opening the briefcase. This is exactly the place. From inside, I took out a slim folder and a small USB stick. James was standing by the sound system, just as planned. He caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. Moments later, the big screen flickered to life behind me. At first, just text appeared, old records, case numbers, dates. Then photographs. Her. Different hair, different city. A courtroom document stamped fraud and coercion, Dallas County. The hall went still. Emily's face drained of color. This, I said calmly, is Emily Carter, also known as Emily Rhodes. She was sued 3 years ago for falsifying signatures, manipulating financial statements, and coercing a partner into giving her control of his assets. That's a lie, she snapped, voice rising. You're insane. You can't. Sit down, I said, not loud but final. I'm not finished. The next slide appeared, screenshots of her old messages. Her words glowed on the screen, line by line, like confessions written in fire. He thinks I'm everything he dreamed of, and his dad's just a sad old man I'll push out of the picture. Once we're married, I'll make him sell that property. Then Mark won't have a say. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Mark stood slowly, his eyes wide, searching her face. Emily, he said, voice breaking, what is this? She stammered. They're fake. He's manipulating you. But her hands were shaking, and everyone saw it. I'm not manipulating anyone, I said. I'm just showing you what's already yours, the truth. She turned desperate now, eyes darting between faces that once adored her. Mark, please, you know me. You know me. He stepped back. Apparently I don't. Everything I did was for us, she cried. Your father's bitter, he hates me because he lost his business, because he. I raised a hand. Emily, that's enough. Her voice cracked. You can't do this to me. I looked straight at her. You did this to yourself. The silence afterward was heavy and complete. Even the music stopped. Mark sank into his chair, head in his hands. His mother-in-law stared straight ahead, face pale as paper. I closed the briefcase slowly, walked off the stage, and left through the back door before applause, confrontation, or pity could find me. Outside, the night air hit cool and sharp. Across the lake, the lights of the hall shimmered like reflections of a life I no longer wanted. Behind me, voices rose, confusion, anger, realization. Ahead, only quiet. I stood by my car, breathing deep for the first time in months. Not triumphant, just lighter. When the door opened behind me, I half expected Emily. But it was Mark. He looked 10 years younger and a lifetime older all at once. "Dad," he said hoarsely. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "You couldn't have known. She lied to me." "She lied to everyone," I said. "That's what people like her do." He swallowed hard. "What now?" "Now." I looked at the dark water. "Now we start over. One truth at a time." He hesitated, then put a hand on my shoulder, the first time he'd done that since he was a boy. "I love you, Dad." "I know," I said softly. "That's why I did it." The morning after the reception, Austin felt different. Not brighter, not quieter, just honest. I sat on my porch with a mug of coffee, the kind that tastes burnt unless you drink it with forgiveness. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like defending myself. The truth had finally done its work. The newspaper on my table was folded to the society page, a small photo of Mark and Emily at their reception. Someone had already added a new caption online: "The event ended abruptly after a family dispute." That's all it said. No names. No details. But everyone in that room would remember exactly what they saw. Mark came by later that day. He looked worn but steady, like someone rebuilding himself from splinters. "Mom called," he said, standing awkwardly by the porch rail. "She heard about last night." I nodded. "She always does." He managed a small smile. "She wanted to know if you plan to press charges." "I'm not," I said. "Let her deal with the wreck she built. I'm done being her character in the story she tells." He sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The breeze moved the trees like they were breathing again. Finally, he said quietly, "You know, I kept hearing your voice in my head these past few weeks. The way you used to say, 'Truth waits. Lies hurry.' I should have listened sooner." I chuckled softly. "You were in love, son. Love blinds the eyes but sharpens the pain. That's its deal." He nodded. "She left town this morning. Took her car and some jewelry. Guess she's good at disappearing." "She's practiced," I said. "And predictable." He looked at me, eyes red but clear. "I want to make things right. Come by the new apartment, have dinner. No speeches this time." "I'll bring dessert," I said. "No briefcases." In the weeks that followed, life fell back into rhythm, though not the same one. The phone stopped ringing with whispers. Neighbors waved again, cautious at first, then genuine. Tom dropped by with a cigar and a grin. "You made local legend, Danny. Folks at the diner are calling it the wedding unveiling. Someone even joked you should teach a class." "I'm retired," I said. "From work and from revenge." He laughed. "Good man. Just don't retire from bourbon." We shared a quiet drink, the kind of silence only old friends understand, no need for words, just shared history breathing between sips. One evening, I took a drive out to the lake again. The same place where I'd parked before walking into that hall. The water was calm now, reflecting the last blush of sunset. I opened the window, feeling the wind brush against my arm. For a moment, I thought about Emily, not with anger, but with that strange pity you reserve for people who never learn to be real. She'd always been chasing something shiny, control, money, approval, without realizing how quickly those things rust. The truth had caught up to her. It always does. I thought about Mark, too. We'd started talking again, dinner once a week, calls every few days. He'd started volunteering at the youth center downtown, fixing things, teaching kids how to use tools safely. I didn't ask if it was guilt or gratitude that drove him there. Maybe both. Maybe neither. That night, back home, I opened my old leather notebook one last time. The same one where I'd written her name and drawn that circle around it. I crossed it out. Not to erase her, but to close the chapter. Beneath it, I wrote a new line. Some debts aren't paid in money. They're paid in silence. Then I shut the notebook, slid it into a drawer, and left it there, not as evidence, but as memory. A few days later, Mark came over with a box. Found something you might want, he said, setting it down. Inside were photos, from years ago, the old house, birthdays, fishing trips, things I'd thought were lost. He'd kept them all these years. He held one up, him and me at the lake, the same lake, a catfish dangling between us like proof that patience pays off. You always said a good fisherman waits, he said. Guess you were right. I smiled. Good fishermen and good fathers, we wait. Sometimes too long, sometimes just enough. He looked at me, eyes soft. You did good, Dad. I did what I had to. He nodded. That's what good looks like. Later, after he left, I walked out back with the photo in hand. The night sky was clear, stars sharp as nails. The world felt wide again, not kind, not cruel, just honest. I set the photo on the porch railing, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Justice doesn't heal you. But it makes the silence bearable." Then I turned off the porch light, let the crickets sing me home, and finally, after months of noise, lies, and ghosts, I slept. If this story spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can continue the journey by clicking the box on the left. Thank you for being here.